3, 2, 1. Undersecretary Lorraine Badoy of the National Task Force to End Local Communist Armed Conflict. Yan, talaga pinractice ko yun, ma'am. Okay, so the NTF-ELCAC, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for doing this. And the main purpose of, just like what I was saying, the main purpose of this episode is to give people the right information as to like what is NTF-ELCAC, what's the vision behind it. You're the best person to talk about this. So at least, ma'am, for the benefit of the people who's gonna watch and listen to this, what is the NTF-ELCAC? What does it do, and what is the vision behind it?
And the National Task Force to End Local Communism was created by President Rodrigo Duterte's signing of the Executive Order number 70. To put it really simply, what does it hope to achieve? It's the end of this 53 years scourge and the whole of nation approach in attaining sustainable peace and progress. So everybody is being enjoined. Everybody is, the president is asking all of us to finally end what should have ended a very, very long time ago. So ano ba yung National Task Force ELCAC? It's the entire, I mean, if I put it simply, it's the entire government doing what it should have done a very long time ago, which is to serve our people. Kasi the understanding, what we've learned, the lesson that we've learned about this 53-year communist scourge that has brought so much pain and destruction and suffering to our people is that it happened because government did not do its job well. I mean, if I put it, if we're cutting to the chase, diba? Ganun lang yon, yung realization na marami ang naloko, marami ang nalinlang nitong communist terrorist group na ito because there was some objective reality. Kasi ang CPPNPA, NDF, what they really want is to weaken government, diba? So how do they do that? They tell a lot of lies about the government, no, so that the people will hate and mistrust government. And then at the end goal of that is to overthrow government and then to supplant our democracy with communism. It was really kind of easy before this administration happened to do that because if you go to the mga interiors na yung talagang gida, the geographically isolated and disadvantaged areas of our country, which I go to on a regular basis, you are really going to see the neglect of government, the indifference and the incompetence. And basically parang kasi when I go there, I've worked with the poor all of my adult life and I'm used to seeing poverty. I'm used to seeing extreme poverty. Pero this is the kind of poverty that I have no words for, and it's by government neglect. When the president signed the Executive Order number 70, he told us, if you really want to end this travesty, this over 5 decades na pang-aabuso ng terorista na mga ito, there are only 2 words to that, and that's good governance, which means that this government has to serve. Kasi ang nangyari dyan is that all they needed to do, with a government that doesn't serve, all the communist terrorists have to do is just tell the truth and just embellish, diba? And lie, because they are liars. So they'll just say, government doesn't really care for you, no? All they needed to do was tell the truth that government doesn't care for you. Tamo, wala kayong mga eskwela man lang para sa mga anak nyo, at para umabot kami dito, wala man lang farm to market roads na para umabot dito, kailangan 5 hours ka na nag-cook. You really need to go on all fours and they could not get out of extreme poverty because they could not have a decent a livelihood, diba? Which is yun yung design ng CPPNPA, NDF, na talagang ilugmok sa kahirapan yung mga kapatid natin na pinakamahihirap. But now it's not like that anymore kasi government is doing its job. When the president sat in office, this is the first time that we have last mile schools, natanggal na yung na dismantle na yung mga communist terrorist training camps ng CPP, NPA, NDF that pretended to be schools, no? I'm talking about yung Save Our Schools network na mga eskwela kuno, pero terrorist training camps. That's Salugpungan schools, Alcadev, Misfi, mga ganyan, no? These schools, but they're not really schools, they're terrorist training camps.
Front lang sila, front.
Yeah, they're fronts. Was where the worst crimes on our indigenous peoples were committed, no? Like recruitment, radicalization, human trafficking, kidnapping, sexual abuse, terrorist financing, slavery, all of that, no? That's why nga ang Pangulo, galing-galing talaga ni Pangulo kasi napakalalim ng understanding niya dito na ang sinabi niya, alam mo, for us to really end this, it's really good governance and the empowerment of our indigenous peoples, because one of those triggers of the creation of EO70 was when our president found out that fully 60 to 90% of the NPAs came from our indigenous peoples. Can you imagine that? So nakita niya na talagang niloko at pinagsamantalahan ang mga kapatid nating katutubo. So I said so much, no? But what is
No,
the
no, this is
EO70?
exactly what we need. This is exactly
Okay,
what we
okay, you
need.
can never make me stop talking about this because I really want to end this. So NTF-ELCAC is beautiful, Franco, kasi it's made up of 12 clusters. So one of the strategic communications cluster, because why? Because the more than anything, this is an information war. When you're up against liars and deceitful bastards like the ones in Congress, you really need this is really one of the formidable weapons of the CPP, if not their most formidable weapon, is their propaganda machine. So there's that, and then there's the livelihood, poverty and livelihood cluster. There's the legal cluster, task force balik loob, and then there's the sectoral and unification cluster. There's the infrastructure cluster. All of it. So it's so comprehensive. It's so comprehensive, and at the very core of that talaga is good governance. That for the first time, our people are finally getting the roads that they need. They have this mga schools, mga health centers, kasi grabe talaga yung dinadaanan nila, Franco. I could write a book about the things that I've seen, no, na nakakaawa talaga, na in order for them to for instance, no, in order for their children to go to school, they have to walk 3 hours every day. It's not like that anymore. I'm not saying that 100% ayos na, no, but we're getting there. Now, for the first time, without any exaggeration, for the first time, a lot of our kababayans, most of them are indigenous peoples, are finally feeling government, no, the services of government. So that in a nutshell is the National Task Force. What it's not is what Leni Robredo says it is. It's what did she say? Tokhang. It really, she just really exposes her ignorance.
Yun nga, ma'am, kasi that's the thing. When I decided to look into the NTF-ELCAC, and then it's a really, really good program. And one of
Yeah.
my main questions back then, and I hope you can provide me with your insight, is bakit ngayon lang siya nangyari? I've been in
Yeah.
existence in this country for more than 30 years. How
Yeah.
come this is the only time that this issue was addressed? And a
Yeah.
lot of it, especially when it comes to the NPA insurgency, as in, pati yung kalakaran nila dyan, like the extortion to the kidnappings and everything, parang it doesn't make sense that it wasn't being addressed before.
Yeah.
And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden now, diba, all of a sudden now it's here. What were the barriers before? Like, based on your insight on how you're handling everything right now, what were the barriers before, and what changed in order for EO70 to happen?
There's only one name I can give you, and
Mm-hmm.
it's Rodrigo Roa Duterte. And I'm not saying this because I love him, because I do love him, but that's not it. A lot of people on the ground, our armed forces, our leaders, those who really know, those who have experienced the benefits of the EO70, as well as the former rebels and high value targets who've surrendered and who were caught, will point to one thing. It is the leadership of Rodrigo Roa Duterte. Alam mo, lagi kong tinatanong yan, why only now? Plenty in various reasons, in various situations and circumstances. Like for instance, recently, the PNP was deputized by the Anti-Money Laundering Council, which is so important in fighting this terrorist communism, to finally end it, diba? So they were telling me that actually matagal ng batas ito. So I'm asking, why only now? And the answer is Rodrigo Roa Duterte. His very strong leadership, and I'm telling you this because I work for the president, and I've experienced his leadership. He doesn't even micromanage. He's just so clear about the things that matter, and nothing will get in the way of this president, nothing. And he has this depth of knowledge that is just that's just being put to good use right now, and he's of uncommon valor, this president, and his love for country can never be questioned. And there are three things talaga that move this president: national interest, and national interest. That's it. In other words, whatever is good for us, that one he will do. Finally, no, noon pa naman itong alam natin na may CPPNPA, NDF, di ba? But no president before him had the balls, had the brains, had the courage, and had the political will to go after it, and what are his marching orders to us? End it before I step down on June 30, 2022. And it does seem like we are going to end that communist insurgency. I mean, Franco, this is not rhetoric. Over 23,000 have surrendered, no, peacefully, and left and right, whole guerrilla fronts are being dismantled, and the weakened guerrilla fronts that are left are on their way to being dismantled. So this peace that had eluded us for so long is finally at hand. We can really touch it already and tuloy-tuloy. But does it mean that this is a done deal? No, it's not. The next president has to continue it, and good governance has to be institutionalized, and the national task force has to be continued. The barangay development program, which is the face of public service, funds have to be poured into this beautiful program, which is so unlike what these senators and this congressman did. No, that's why this president is so clear. Palitan na natin yung mga yan, yung mga senador na yan. Because what is the barangay development program? That's the face of public service talaga. It was supposed to be 20 million for barangays that have been cleared. This 20 million basically will go to programs that the community themselves, the barangay people, the people themselves have identified as their priority projects. So we're talking about farm to market roads, schools, health centers, bridges, irrigation systems, water and sanitation systems, electricity, these basic services that people like us in Manila just take for granted. We've had it all our lives. Diba? I've never known a day in my life na walang kuryente o tubig or kalsada. Diba? So it's these things that we take for granted, and yet yung mga kababayan natin, napakarami pa nila na naiwanan na talaga. So this barangay development program addresses that. These are the cleared barangays. Ito yung mga barangay na for decades have suffered under the abuses of the CPPNPA and NTF that finally na-clear sila. But after that, you need to give development programs. So we asked for 28 billion, and that would have funded 1,406 of our cleared barangays, the poorest barangays in our country. The poorest of the poor, pinaka-poor talaga ito, pinaka-disempowered. And these are barangays that a lot of them have never felt government. So finally, we were going to do right by them. And what did Senate do? What did they? They slashed the budget. From 28 billion, it became only 4 billion. That's a slap in our faces of the poorest of the poor. No, and then after a lot of back and forth, we were told that we got 17.1 billion, but in the end, all we got is 5 billion. So that's nothing. From 20 million, we're down to 4 billion per barangay. So basically, I really like what the president said, because they've already unmasked themselves for what they are. Don't vote anymore for these senators. Who are these senators? I'll give you their names. Angara, Gatchalian, Villanueva, Drilon, De Lima, Pangilinan, Ontiveros, Lacson, Gordon. I think that's it. Now, if I remember later, I'm going to make a mnemonic so that I can tell you who these senators are. Very heartless and so indifferent to the sufferings of our people, and you don't want that anymore, because hindi naman ito regalo hindi naman regalo yung binibigay natin, obligasyon yon, di ba? So
Kasi ma'am, this is a good follow-up question to that. Why do you think is there a disconnect which I hope you could relate relay the story there's a certain disconnect between people from Metro Manila and people
Yeah.
from and what is happening in the provinces,
Yeah.
especially yung mga sobrang layo, yung mga hindi na natin
Yeah.
talaga nakikita, yung sa mga bundok, 'di ba? Yung mga barangay
Yeah.
doon. As much as you can you please depict the situation of these far-flung areas na yun nga yung sinasabi niyo, 'di ba? Hindi nila nararamdaman yung gobyerno.
Yeah.
Kung meron man, it's very minimal, and they're surrounded by insurgents. And I
Yeah.
do not understand why our politicians, our government leaders are not aware of that. 'Di ba? Siguro naman pwede naman silang 'di ba, pwede kang oy, ikaw, mag-research ka nga dito, 'di ba?
Yeah.
Parang
Yeah.
tignan mo ako na
Very
nangyayari
good.
dito. 'Di ba?
Correct.
I
Yeah.
don't
Correct.
understand the disconnect between that. My entire existence, I think if the government and the people have that clear path of communication, and everyone is just open to what is happening with each other, I think policy making, policy implementation would be a lot better. So at
Yeah.
least now you can have this opportunity, like what is really happening. Kasi what we see on mainstream media, what we see on our phones, on the television. These are sound bites, eh. These are
Mhm.
small depictions of what is really happening. So at
Yeah.
least coming from you, and you see this on a regular basis, what is there and what do they really need?
Okay, so I'll address it on two fronts, no? The common tao and the government officials, 'di ba? So we're talking about the question of privilege. We are very privileged. We're privileged people, 'di ba? You live in Manila, you live in the big cities. Privileged ka talaga. Kasi hindi mo nga alam paano yung buhay na walang kalsada. I'll tell you what their lives are. Itong mga kapatid natin na katutubo, they have little gardens, no? And they raise they raise for instance saging, banana, and then they want to sell it, 'di ba? Para naman may konting kabuhayan sila, but there's no farm to market roads, 'di ba? So they trek for hours and hours, and that's on all fours, carrying pa yung ano nila, yung produce nila. So
Mhm.
pagdating nila sa baba, lasog-lasog na yung saging, 'di ba? So there's no one that's gonna buy it, or if they buy, it's patalo, 'di ba? There's walang profit. So we are creating poverty. So in other words, no, you cannot imagine a life like that until you're there, until you see it. So the privilege, no, privilege confers on us the responsibility to know about other people's realities, and not to be that ass who thinks that our reality is the only reality that exists. No, I'm sorry, that's so wrong. Privilege really confers on you that responsibility to know other people's realities, more so yung pinakamahihirap. Kasi we have that option. Tayo may choice tayong bumaba at alamin natin, di ba? But sila, wala naman
Mm.
silang ganong option eh. Aakyat sila at aalamin nila yung buhay ng mayaman. Siyempre wala silang ganon, di ba? And what for? Pero tayo, meron tayong ganong option kasi nakakaluwag tayo sa buhay, di ba? So bilang taga Manila o taga Cebu ay malalaking bansa na yan, or malalaking syudad na yan, or mga taga UP, taga Ateneo na wag naman kayo walang modo, 'di ba? Wag kayong walang modo na hindi kayo sumasama sa laban na ito. Napaka-privileged ng buhay ninyo, no? I have three children who are college age, no? And one of them is 28. And that's what I teach them, no? Just because you wake up and your room is aircon and there's food there, and all, there's Wi-Fi, and you go to school in a car, and doesn't mean that everybody's like that, no? And that's why I've always really exposed them. So that's it. That's your responsibility. And as for there's a bigger, mas malaki yung kasalanan nito mga senador na ito. Tingin ko sa kanila, napaka-komportable na ng buhay nila. Hindi na sila bumababa. Hindi na nila kinikilala kung sino yung dapat pinaglilingkuran nila. They've forgotten. They have forgotten the poorest of the poor. And I'll tell you why, ha. And I'm not saying that I'm immune from that, or that I'm so virtuous that I go down and la la la, di ba? No, it's the president. The president does it all the time. I'm with the presidential communication, so we follow him wherever he goes. And I'm telling you, he's so masipag. Talagang yung pinaka barangay pupuntahan niya yan. And as a government official, I've always been conscious na I have a very beautiful office in Malacanang, di ba? But I'm hardly ever there. You really need to go down. You really need to make a conscious decision to go down. And the people really, I get so much more out of it than whatever I give them, the little that I give them when I'm with our people, because they remind me why I'm in office. And it's so beautiful, Franco, it's so beautiful to see and to know and to hear the people that you are giving your life to. That's the gift that they give us. And I think, I really pity these senators, because it's really all about money for them at this point. It's not even anymore any other thing. It's really just pera. They're so greedy. Ganid talaga
Mhm.
yung mga yan. And there's corruption involved in here. And I'm gonna tell that. I'm gonna tell that outright, Sana man lang, no? Sana man lang naisip nila. Ang liit lang naman nito eh. 20 million is just little. Dahil sa kapabayaan, all those years na hindi mo sila talaga pinansin, that should only be a subsidy. The truth is, we should be pouring funds on these communities, on our mga kababayan na walang-wala. Pero ngayon tinanggalan nyo pa, 'di ba? Tinanggalan nyo pa na. So I'm grateful that the front runner, no, the president has made it very clear to us what it is. No, palitan nyo na 'yan. Kasi ang president natin talaga gustong-gusto niyang ibigay 'yan. So that's my answer to you, Franco, that our public servants, these people who are supposed to serve our people, have forgotten. And they have forgotten because they're also always constantly in their air-conditioned rooms and in their Toyota whatever cruiser,
Mhm.
whatever that is, their luxury cars, and they have forgotten that all they are public servants. That's why I really like what our president keeps on telling us. Hindi kayo special. That's what he tells us, the government officials. Trabahante lang tayo sa gobyerno. Paulit-ulit niya sinasabi yon. Kasi alam mo kung bakit? Ang gobyerno sa Pilipinas, maraming officials dyan,
Mhm.
yabang-yabang. Na talagang sobrang yabang. Nakalimutan na nila kung sino sila, di ba?
Mhm.
Na you're there to serve the Filipino people.
Mhm.
Trabahante ka lang sa gobyerno. Therefore, magtrabaho ka. Huwag ka dyan what did Senate do, 'di ba? What are they asking for? They're asking for a new building in Senate. What's that? How much? 10
Oh,
billion or
nag-relocate
something
sila, eh.
like
Gusto
that.
nila mag-relocate, eh. Parang gusto nila
Yeah,
magkaroon
yeah.
ng sarili nilang building because they're
Ano
they're
kung
apparently
alam mo,
renting in ano.
yeah, alam mo Franco, pag pumunta ka sa lumang building ng Senate, maganda naman eh.
Yeah.
Ganda naman siya. Hindi ko nga alam kung anong problema nila doon eh. 'Di ba? Etong mga kababayan natin, ano bang hinihingi nila? Talagang basic things. And ano ang maririnig mo ng mga kwento, yun they have to carry their children through putik na hanggang
Mhm.
hanggang hanggang tuhod nila. Pag may sakit yung anak nila, oras 'yon para lang makarating sa health center kasi wala silang sariling health center. Pagkatapos wala silang maayos na kalye. So they go through all this, and then kayo, all you need is a bigger, I don't know, a bigger chair kaya, a bigger lounge to park
Pero
their
ma'am,
butts or
sorry to
whatever.
cut you off, ma'am. Pero yung pagdating
Yeah,
kasi when it comes to these things din pala, another thing that I observed din kasi is, what about the LGUs? Are the
yeah,
LGU's capabilities really limited na
yeah.
kinailangang pumasok ni NTF-ELCAC to help
Yes,
rehabilitate or to improve all of these things? 'Di ba? Kasi for
yes.
example, if you go to a place like yeah, ano ba, yung mga Tawi-Tawi, 'di ba? O yung
Yeah,
mga sobrang island na probinsya, they have their LGUs, 'di ba? You have your local
yeah,
channels.
yeah.
What's limiting them from doing the things that you guys at NTF-ELCAC are doing?
Plenty of reasons. Plenty of reasons. I'll tell you. I'll give you first the basic.
Mhm.
The basic belief here. The core thing is that when it comes to making lives better for our
Mhm.
people, local matters far more than national. So tama ka talaga na yung LGU na yan. Yung LGU, they're the ones that can really, really make a difference. A mayor, a barangay captain is far, far more powerful and more important than even a senator when it comes to making lives better, 'di ba? So and we're very happy to tell you that there's so many of them. So many pala. They just needed the national government to back them up and to have a national plan.
Hmm.
So what's stopping them? There's not enough funds. There's not enough funds. For instance, si Governor Tyrone Uy was telling us, no, for each barangay, let's say in Davao de Oro siya, they'll only get maybe 400,000 from the ERA, no?
Wow.
And here we are, we're giving them 20 million, 'di ba? So it's like talagang it's really what's needed, but even
Huge
then it's not
increase.
enough. Yeah, yeah, it is. It's really a huge increase. Plus the genius of the EO70 of the NTF-ELCAC is the convergence of government agencies, so that when you go down on the ground, what you're going to see is not just the LGU slugging it out alone, but the entire government bureaucracy and machinery talagang converging and helping each other. It's really a beautiful thing to watch, Franco. I mean, because I go down on a regular basis talaga. So what you see is nag-uumpugan na yung TESDA, yung DPWH, yung DSWD, yung DOH. Everybody talaga is helping, and TESDA it's really beautiful. This is how it ought to be. This is really how it ought to be when government agencies converge. The ones that win are the people, more so the poorest of the poor. Because what does our president say about government? The poor, they only have government. The rich, wala, you have other resources eh. Pero ang mahihirap, they only have us. So if we renege on our duties, pinakakawawa talaga sila. And the role of government is to level the playing field for the poor, so that may laban naman sila ng konti, 'di ba, to get out of poverty.
Everything, I mean, the NPA problem has
Mm,
been with us for more than 50 years. And
yeah,
now, in this administration, dun pa lang siya talaga na-address.
yeah,
'Di ba? And
yeah.
now, people are more aware of what's really happening. Kasi ako,
Mm,
ako, matagal ko nang alam na may
Yeah.
extortion, may lagay system, pag hindi, susunugin kita, di ba? And
Yeah.
now,
Yeah.
I'm very surprised that when people find this out na parang, oh my God, ganun pala yung nangyayari doon. So
Yeah.
prior to the creation of NTF-ELCAC and then you coming on board, what was the situation back then, and what were the things that you found out na parang did you have a vague idea of what was happening, and then pag when you got the position, okay, alam ko na to, or when you got the position, it's like, oh my God, ito pala to, but it's far
Yeah.
worse than you
Yeah.
imagined.
I went to UP for college. So
Mhm,
a lot of those lies that were told to us, because as you know, UP was targeted from its very inception to be the
mhm,
center of gravity of communism in the Philippines, diba? So
mhm,
that's the school that I went to, and it shaped my opinions, and that I carried with me until I was in government. I was in my 50s and I still believed a lot of those lies. So did I know? Of course, I kind of knew because my husband is also a soldier, no? So I kind of
mhm,
knew, but I had no. But when I sat at the NTF-ELCAC, it was really eye opening, and it was really so heartbreaking because finally I saw the picture, no, a little at a time. It was as head of the strategic communications cluster. I had to educate myself, diba? So that meant talking to the AFP, the PNP, the intelligence community, and most of all the former rebels who told me so many things that really broke my heart. So my coming into consciousness was so painful because I saw how deeply betrayed our people are by the CPPNPA NDF, that they are in our churches, in our schools, in media, all sectors of society, but most of all, these institutions that shaped our minds and our hearts and our souls, that we entrusted our children to, di ba? And nandyan sila, biro mo sa simbahan. That's why you'll be hard-pressed to find the CBCP
mhm,
siding with the government, di ba? Why kaya? Why kaya is that, di ba? You're not, what did Carl Jung say, Franco? He said, you're not who you say you are, you're what you do, di ba?
mhm.
So a lot of this itong mga madring paring ito, like Mary Jan Manansan, as it turns out, Central Committee of the CPPNPA NDF. When I sat with the NTF-ELCAC, my journey has really, I think, paralleled the journey of our countries coming into consciousness as well. And it's and again, I'll keep on quoting Carl Jung because he's my
Mhm.
favorite he's my favorite kaya he said, there is no coming into consciousness without pain. In other words, hindi ka magigising hangga't hindi ka nasasaktan, 'di ba? So napakasakit nung nakita ko, and I had really no idea. It was so daunting. How do we tell the Filipino people this story, 'di ba? So it's been over 3 years now, and I do think that we are succeeding at a very real level, but there's still so much that needs to get done.
Ano
Yeah.
I really believe that these stories have to be shared. Kasi
Yes.
wala akong nakikita sa news, wala akong nakikita
Yeah.
sa
Why
like
why
sa
we know,
dyaryo or sa portal,
Franco, hold
wala,
on,
eh.
ha? Hold on, Franco. What's wrong with you that you're looking for the truth in mainstream media?
Hindi,
Don't you
yun
know
nga,
that
eh.
you're
Hindi, para sa'kin kasi hindi yun kasi yun, ma'am, eh, 'di ba? The pursuit of truth should be in everyone. But the
Yeah.
problem is, majority of our kababayans, wala silang time to actually do research, wala silang access to resource people. The only thing that they'll believe is what they hear on the radio, what they'll hear on what they'll see on
So,
television. And it's
yeah,
very
so
disheartening. Ako personally, it's very
yeah,
disheartening to see that
yes, yes.
that ako kasi I know I have access to people who tell stories
Mm.
like that. So for example, I had Ka Eric over at the podcast. So kulang
Yeah.
pa nga yung episode namin,
Yeah,
gusto niya pang gumawa ng
yeah,
isa pa, eh. Kasi nga
yeah. Gawan
I
mo
hadn't,
pa.
'di ba? Ganda, eh, gagawa ko
Yeah,
talaga. May ano na kami
yeah,
na kasi nga now, especially now, he's gonna run for Congress.
yeah, yeah, he
Ano
should be
yan, tawag
there.
dito, na people are, it baffles and surprises me that a lot of people are not aware of what's really happening on the ground. Siguro I cannot blame them, and I won't kasi nga wala eh. Ang priority ng tao is kumita. Ang priority ng tao is magtrabaho, 'di ba? You have to pay the bills, you have to ensure that your survival ang priority eh. So wala silang oras to do this. And what's immediate consumption? Immediate consumption would be what you see on your phone, what you see on
Mm,
social media, 'di ba?
mm,
Ngayon nga, a lot of people, there's a huge distrust on mainstream media now, that people rely
yeah,
on independent media or their friends, yung immediate circle nila for information like this. So
yeah,
medyo kahit papaano in a way nagtitilt ng konti yung passing of information. But ako kasi, that's one of the reasons why I want to do these things, kasi
yeah,
at least in my community, in my audience,
yeah.
in my own way, these stories have to be told. Like for example, may isang beses,
Bravo.
ako alam ko idiot sa mga tao sa Twitter, pero meron talaga dong isa, di ko napigilan, pinatulan ko eh. Kasi nga when they this whole propaganda about yung na and I saw that you were parang pinatawag kayo sa Senate, and then you had to explain like that photo of soldiers, tapos may namatay na NPA rebel dun sa baba. Yun na yung photo, and everyone was dipshitting, and parang so there was one kasi medyo kilala ko siya. Sabi ko, bro, ito yan ah.
Sino yan?
Ay hindi, nakalimutan ko na yung pangalan niya sa Twitter eh. Basta sabi ko, bro, alam mo ba, nung kinuha yung picture na yan, pagkatapos kunin yung picture na yan, binalot yung taong yan,
Mm,
binuhat yan ng sundalo.
yeah,
Naglakad siya ng 6 na oras, pababa nung bundok, sinakayan sa ambulansya at hinatid sa pamilya niya. Kasi yung
yeah.
mga kapwa NPA niya, hindi nila kayang
Inabando na.
gawin yon.
Inabando
Inabando
na
na
pati
nila yan,
siya.
di ba?
Yeah,
Yung, I don't care about the photo, but the story wasn't told. These are ano yun, yung gap na yun eh. Yun yung sinasabi ko sa tao na parang, once they take that photo, they wrap that person's body, and nobody really, I mean, kung hindi kayo ang nagkwento noon or si General Parlad, nobody would know, 'di ba? It's very, it creates that conflict eh, and it feeds propaganda. And
yeah,
yun nga, so many insights from Ka Eric with regards to, I mean, the NPA had 50 plus years to create that infrastructure, which
yeah,
begs me to ask you now, how are you so far? Like you are like in the forefront na parang,
yeah,
okay, she's naming names. Here, 'di ba?
yeah,
Where does this confidence and faith in the process? Kasi, 'di ba? Let's face it, 'di ba? Truth be told, after Duterte, hindi natin alam what's next.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
pero at least for the time that you were given, you named
yeah,
everyone. Holy shit, she actually did it. Sabi ko
yeah,
talaga siya.
yeah, because it is the
So,
truth. Yeah,
'di ba? So now it
yeah,
begs the question na, where does this faith and confidence come from? Like you mentioned the Makabayan Bloc,
yeah,
you have pushback from the Senate, you have pushback from Congress,
yeah,
and how are you dealing with all of this, especially when you started naming names and
yeah.
exposing their system? So yun yung pinaka
Okay.
gusto ko talagang tanungin sa inyo eh.
Yeah, okay. Where does it come from? It
Mhm.
comes from so much pain. As the head of the strategic communications, I'm privy to a lot of stories of our people. And I've met so many of them, our indigenous peoples, mothers who've lost their children, indigenous peoples who were killed right in front of their families. You know, the poorest of the poor na kahit na sari-sari store lang na nagbebenta ng asukal at itlog, kahit yun kikikila nila, 'di
Yes,
ba?
yes.
And it comes from all this all the rage that I feel no at the abuses that were done on us. You're basically what you're asking me was, why am I not afraid? I'm really not afraid. I'm really itching for a fight. I really when I go in front of this kamatayan block in like in Congress when it's our budget hearing, it does seem like maybe I'm alone, but I'm not eh. I really bring with me Keith Absalon. I really cover my blood with the blood of the indigenous peoples who were killed mercilessly. That's what I really do. I really feel that in my soul. And I don't really care who comes next. If Lenny Robredo wins, I don't care. I'll fight her. I'll fight the CPP, NPA, NDF. You know why? You know why, Franco? I've been given so much. This is such a privileged position, so much power. No, and that power is not for me to keep. It's really to give to those who've been so disempowered by this communist terrorist group, and in whatever capacity I can, I've been given a voice, and that voice will be used for those who've been silenced. And as a mother, my children are my joy. They're the center of my life, and I cannot for the life of me imagine what the mother of Keith Absalon goes through every day, what these mothers who have lost their children go through. And I cannot, I lost my mother when I was 6, so she defines me so much. What they've done, what they've done to our mothers, they've made really this country the saddest country for mothers, and that has to end. That really has to end. Mothers should never be without their children. And the poorest of the poor, what have they done to them, 'di ba? Talagang kawalang yaan. Parang hindi na tao itong mga ito, Franco. Talaga mga halimaw. At kailangan natin itong tapusin. I really it's really a joy. It really rolls off my mouth when I take off their masks, because they've used those masks to really harm and really give so much grief and suffering to the poorest of the poor, the most helpless, walang kalaban-laban. So
Mhm.
I gleefully take off their masks and name names, because you know what? I'm not alone. I stand on solid ground when I say those names, and those are the official stance of the government of the Philippines. No, I'm not just what's the NTF-ELCAC? It's not just Lorraine Badoy. My goodness, no, I'm just a little dot there. It's the AFP, the PNP, it's the NBI, the DOJ, the NICA. Diba? Those are people who know, diba, what I'm talking about, and I
Mhm.
get my information from them. It's the former rebels who have joined hands with us. So I'm not a religious person, not at all. But well, not in the traditional sense. But I really do think that there is really that Ecclesiastes, no, a time to weep and a time to cry, to laugh, a time to and now it's their time. Dumating na ang araw nila. Ang
Like,
saya-saya nila, noon, but now we have to end it.
and speaking of ending it, like when it comes to ending insurgency, and at least ako nga, pag nakikita ko yung updates, it's like a lot of rebel leaders are getting caught, some of them getting killed. What would be the economic and socio-economic effect when insurgency is down?
Oh my.
Kasi feeling ko a lot of people just see the violence eh. They don't see the benefit of that region or that province pag walang insurgency.
That's basically what you're asking, a person who's not really affected by all of this is asking himself, 'di ba? What's in it for me, 'di ba? Why should I care? 'Di ba? What's the economic benefits, 'di ba? And that mindset, that us and them mindset will be the death of us. Because in reality there is no difference. Whatever happens to our indigenous peoples, no matter how far away they are from us, really affects us. That's the whole thing. There really is a river that runs through all of us, and we are all connected. So if you okay, for instance, no, the poorest of the poor, that would be most likely our indigenous peoples. You bring them up economically, nandun sila sa pinakababa ng ating society. You bring out the entire country, the whole country goes up economically. I was asked this question also kasi parang how will you judge the success of the economic programs of the government? And my thinking, it's when it's inclusive, when everybody is taken out of poverty, 'di ba? So that's it. I mean, I'm not an economist, no, but it's a no-brainer. You take the poor out of poverty, you lift the whole country. It's not successful. A country is not successful if the only ones who get rich are the rich ones already, 'di ba? And I think it's a shame. It's a shame if you are a senator, your children go to wonderful schools, and yet the people that you're supposed to be taking care of don't have schools, 'di ba?
Mhm.
Or if you ride your Land Cruiser every day and in these beautiful roads, and the people that you're supposed to be serving don't have farm to market roads at all, you are a failure as a senator. 'Di ba? So did I answer your question? I mean,
Yes, kasi ano
okay,
yan eh,
thank
favorite
you.
story ko diyan 'pag nagta-travel ako, like kunyari magse-seminar kami sa probinsya, walang signal. Sabi ko, kasalanan ng NPA yan kasi sinusunog nila
Correct.
yung mga
Yeah, yeah,
cell
yeah.
site eh, 'di ba?
Yeah.
And then when
The
it comes to
si
go
si
ahead, ma'am.
Sani Africa is the head. He's a CPP. He's a member of the CPPNPA NDF and head of the Ibon
Mhm,
Foundation is a CPP NPA NDF creation. So sabi niya, ang belief niya, tinan mo naman tong katangahan nito mga CPP-NPA na ito, that this 53-year insurgency does not cause poverty. Can you imagine that stupidity? So that's the economic wisdom of of economic knowledge of sunny Africa, who's supposed to have studied at the London School of Economics. What does that tell you? Communism makes people stupid, 'di ba?
Mhm.
They don't know how to think anymore. It's really always the collective. Whatever the central committee tells them to say, that's what they'll say. So how can it not? How can it not cause poverty? Like you just said, nagpapabomba ng towers, no, ng mga cell sites, and then these beautiful roads, wala, the
Wala,
bridges,
that's ano
the
nila, binobomba rin.
infrastructure. Yeah,
Like after I released the episode ni Relisa Lucena and ni Ka Eric,
yeah,
I got
yeah,
a lot of random messages from people from the province saying,
yeah,
"Uy, thank you nilabas
yeah,
niyo yung episode na yun kasi dito sa
yeah,
amin." And these are like Cotabato, like mga
yeah.
sobrang
Ay,
malalayo,
which
nagugulat
reminds
ako.
me, Franco, my answer was not complete when you asked
Mhm,
me about yung information ng mainstream. I
mhm,
need to thank you because there's one thing that has changed, and with the CPP, kawawa talaga sila because it's the age of information now. So it's not just dinosaur kasi sila, hindi sila maka-adjust agad-agad. So for the longest time nandiyan sila sa mainstream media. But people like you, everybody, you can already have a platform, 'di ba? And it seems to me like you have a good grasp of what you can do. So
mhm,
that you are giving a voice to the voiceless, that's so important, 'di ba? So yan yung ambag mo, napakahalaga niyan. And that was yan yung nagbago. Yan yung game changer, yung internet, 'di ba? So
mhm.
yeah, so thank you for what you do, Franco.
Oo, ako naman kasi ma'am, I created this platform to be
Yeah,
a center of discussion. Kaya kahit
yeah,
nung kay Ate Relisa, kay Ka Eric, at ngayon sa
yeah,
inyo, lagi ako may disclaimer, kung meron mang Communist Party of the Philippines or
yeah,
CPPNPA, NDF, gusto niyong pumunta sa podcast ko, okay lang din. Ba-blur
yeah.
ko yung mukha mo. 'Di ba?
May taker
Pag-usapan
na ba?
natin.
Meron na bang
Ha?
meron na bang meron na bang
Wala,
ano?
walang
Wala, kasi
gusto.
ayaw nila.
Hindi
Ayaw
kasi
nila, ayaw nila ng ganyan.
probably kasi yun nga, that's the thing, I'm not a sound bites kinda guy. I
Yeah.
love asking questions, and ako
Yeah,
kasi
there
I
you
love
go.
talking to people, and
Yeah.
I want all of us to understand each other. And so far kasi
Yeah.
the way I'm
Yeah.
seeing things, for every administration puro sila reklamo pero walang solusyon. That's the
Yeah.
problem. Ako kasi
Yeah.
I want to discuss the problem, but let's also discuss solutions.
Yeah.
Because if we're not gonna discuss solutions, nagbatuhan lang tayo ng putik.
Yeah, that's
'Di ba?
right.
Parang it's mudslinging at the highest level, and we're doing it in front of a lot of people.
Also, Franco, a lot of those mudslingers are the kamatayan block. They're in
Mm,
Congress. They're supposed to, they have so much resources, di ba? And yet all they do is criticize government. And yet they're part of government. They're supposed to be part of government, di ba? So
mm,
yan yung kawalangyaan ng kamatayan block na yan. Paano kasi CPP, NPA, NDF sila? They're not in Congress for the people but for Joma season and the Communist
mhm.
Party of the Philippines.
Actually nga ma'am, lahat ng mga like I would have discussions with people who believe in
Mm.
communism, and I go like, take my country for example. Joma Sison is the head of the CPP, NPA,
Mm.
NDF, and he's
Mm.
lavishly living in
Yeah,
some other country, while
yeah,
yung mga
yeah,
torotot niya nandun sa
yeah.
bundok
Torotot.
nagpapakamatay. Sabi ko, 'di ba? So it's like, hindi kasi
Yeah,
ako medyo naapektuhan talaga ako like several years back kasi one of my batchmates in school, kasi
yeah,
lempot talaga 'to, matalino siyang tao pero hindi siya sundalo, nilagay siya sa
yeah.
frontline. Sabi ko, "Ano ine-expect niyo, 'di ba? Mamamatay
So
'yan."
he
I
died.
was like, he died.
How
And
old
then
was he? How
they're
old is
saying
he,
that he's a
Franco?
hero. Ha? Ano po?
Yeah,
Is the hero, kasi
he's a
talaga nag-post
hero.
ako dun sa page nung sa UP. Sabi ko, "Tingin niyo hero? Kalokohan 'yan." Sabi ko, "Inuto niyo yung tao, tapos nilagay niyo diyan sa harap, tapos ngayon gagawin niyong martir." Sabi ko, "Mga bobo kayo, hindi niyo alam kung anong
Kaya
pinagsasabi
nila
niyo."
sinasabing martir at hero para makapag-uto pa sila ng mas marami. 'Di ba? They
Mhm,
romanticize terrorism para mas marami silang mahikayat at mauto na sumali sa CPP, NPA, NDF. So
mhm.
yan yung and from the mouths of the former rebels themselves, they say that they recruit the CPP NPA recruits our children because they
Mhm.
want them to die. They want the body count to be really sky high para mas magalit ang tao sa gobyerno, 'di
Oh, okay. So
They
kasama
want you
pala
to
'yun
die.
sa
Yeah,
ano, okay. Kasi ako
yeah,
the way I saw it before, and the way I understood it, kasi 'pag bata madaling mauto, 'di ba,
yeah. That's
formation of
part of it.
ideologies, madali
Mm,
silang they're very idealistic, they're very emotional, it's easy to trigger their emotions, and
yeah,
the way I understood it, it's a very systematic way of recruitment, eh.
yeah.
So and we can discuss that later on. Pero I want to cover as well, ma'am, while you're here, is please tell everyone another huge benefit that I see is yung mga bumabalik loob sa gobyerno. Can you
Yeah.
please tell that story? Because I think that needs to be told a lot and magnified. Like how many have gone back to kasi ako naman, the way I understand it po kasi is there are people who got recruited, and then there are people who joined the insurgency because they had a really bad experience with the government,
Mm,
and then
yeah.
eventually these individuals are like going back to the fold. So please, like, can you please tell the success story of that part of NTF-ELCAC?
There is the enhanced comprehensive integrated program, the
Mm-hmm.
ECLIP of the Task Force Balik Loob. So if you're a member of the CPPNPA, if you are an NPA, no, or one of the militia bayan, and you surrender, right away you're going to get a lot of benefits from the government. This is government's way of giving you a second lease in life, 'di ba? Kasi ang
Mm-hmm.
understanding ng government, malalim ang understanding ng government sa problemang ito. Unlike other administrations na pag NPA ka, automatically kaaway ka, hindi ganon. This government doesn't take that position. We understand, no, na naloko kayo, na you were deceived because because government did not do its job really well, di ba? So we are asking you to come back into the fold of the law peacefully, and if you do come back into the fold of the law peacefully, government will really will do all it can to give you a second lease in life. So there's a cash reward, a cash incentive. I think 35,000 or 65,000, something like that. Tapos may housing, ang ganda-ganda pa ng mga bahay, Franco. Talagang maganda, hindi siya yung parang yung Pinoy style na parang bahay
Mm-hmm.
ng aso, hindi siya ganoon, maganda talaga. And it's by the NHA, National Housing Authority, si Jun Escalada, he's the head of the NHA. And then if you surrender pa your firearms, you'll get additional cash pa. And
Mm-hmm.
then there's also livelihood training. There's, if you want to go back to school, your children can also go back to school, all these benefits, no? And then ang I don't have the numbers right now, but if you can, I can get it. The numbers are really impressive. I'll ask my staff. Anyway, you can
Hindi,
cut
okay lang,
this,
ma'am, kasi
diba?
the last time I checked, libo-libo na siya, eh.
We
And
have over 23,000 surrenders.
mhm.
Can you imagine that? What does that mean? That's 23,000, over 23,000 of Filipinos who have stopped killing fellow Filipinos, 'di ba? So what's that? That's the real face of peace. Ito yung totoong kapayapaan. It's not just lip service. It's real, totoo talaga. And whole guerrilla fronts are being dismantled, no? And as I told you, no, just recently, the entire leadership of the Southern Mindanao Regional Sub-Regional Committee 5 surrendered. All of them. They're
Mhm.
high ranking, no? And the neutralization of Cabo, Oris, 'di ba? And Kake, this is really I'm asking you not to blink because you might miss it. This is a very historic moment in our country's history, and it's a very proud moment that we are redeeming ourselves and we are recreating a new country, no? That's more in keeping with who we are as a people. And it's really true that President Rodrigo Roa Duterte is handing over to the next president a country in a much better shape than what we found it. So ang philosophy nung ECLIP at saka nung task force balik loob dun sa mga former rebels ay you are going to become productive citizens of our country. You know, some of them have really started businesses that have made them prosperous and that have given them a new chance in life, and they're with their families now na dati kasi sila, ba't ba sila sumali? Kasi pinangakuan sila na they're gonna
Mm.
get land,
Yeah.
they'll have better lives, etc., etc. Of course, if you ask the thousands and thousands of them who have surrendered, and in all my years with the NTF-ELCAC, I still have to see even just one who will say to me that the CPPNPA NDF made good their promise. Kahit isang kutsara ng lupa walang binigay yung mga yan, unless you're talking about land grabbing na mas lalo pang sumama ang buhay nila, all of them. So
Yeah.
there.
Kasi ma'am, yun yung pinaka-importante. Like, everything that you laid down is the most crucial aspect of people who come back to the government's fold. A lot of people kasi baka iniisip nila pag bumalik sila, okay, wala na, 'di ba? Parang bukod sa
Mm, mm,
labeled na ako, markado ko, medyo, pero at
mm.
least now, 'di ba? You get
Yeah,
money to start a new life. You're given a house. Practically what you were promised when you were recruited.
yeah.
'Di ba? So at least now
And you
people
don't have
have,
to kill a
and you
fellow
don't have to kill,
Filipino.
'di
You don't
ba? You
have to be
don't
a
have,
terrorist, no?
'di ba? Yun yung ano it's these are the things that we have. These are the stories that we have to tell. These are the
Yeah.
information that needs to spread in
Pero
order for people to understand. Yes, ma'am.
yeah, pero Mandy, pero Franco, parang there's two sides of this kasi. So the government has to also do its part. No, there is a sacred contract between the people and the government. No, that that from now on, good governance has to be institutionalized. That as public servants, we have to be true to our sworn duty, diba?
Mhm.
Na you really are going to serve, because if you don't serve, what happened was we put our people in harm's way. Imagine, pinagkakain na lang sila ng buo-buo ng mga teroristang ito because government did not do its job, diba? So but the good thing is, the good thing that I've seen on the ground, Franco, is that public service is transformative on both ends. Talagang even as a public servant, when you see the power that you have of your job, the joy of serving and what it can do to our people, it's really
It's
there's
very
there are no
fulfilling.
it's very
Yeah.
fulfilling, and really the sanctity of what you're doing is really there, no? So we really hope that this continues until the next administration.
Yun pala. That's probably, I don't want to keep you, ma'am, pero that's
Yeah.
practically my last question. In your thoughts and how you see things are going, how sustainable is this program? Is it hinged on the next administration and the administration after that, or do you think that it has a solid foundation within the structure of government that will allow it to operate and continue its projects? This is a noble cause for me. And personally, ang iniisip ko talaga, everything is up in the air now. Whoever is gonna
Yeah.
win the next election will determine if this project will continue.
Yeah.
And if it
Yes.
continues, well and good, perfect. 'Di ba? Ano
Yes.
tayo? Business as usual. The
Yeah.
problem with politics, when you put it in the equation, is whoever wins and they don't agree with the approach of NTF-ELCAC, wala, 'di ba? It will be a sign for insurgency to rise up again, and then it will encourage people na parang, okay, tapos na yung reign nila, pwede na tayo ulit magloko, 'di ba? So, how do you see this panning out in the next couple administrations?
The verdict is really in. The National Task Force LCAC is the magic formula that we've all been waiting for to finally end what should have ended a very long time ago, and good governance and the barangay development program. So is it strong enough? No. It has to be continued. And so far, from among the presidential aspirants, the only one that has been very clear about his support of the National Task Force and that has made a commitment to continue and has shown therefore a deep knowledge of the problem is Bongbong Marcos. The
Mhm.
rest, wala talaga. Lenny Robredo is really not fit to be president. She's so incompetent. She flip-flopped, no? She flip-flopped. She said that she was for the abolition of the NTF-ELCAC, and then she flip-flopped, and then she changed her mind again, and
Mhm.
then she is for the resumption of this phony peace talks, diba? And she
Mhm.
she is committed to. Can
Sorry.
you imagine that? I know,
Okay.
really, really, no. I mean, at this, in other words, and Manny Pacquiao is the same, and Isko Moreno is the same. The resumption of peace talks, and Ping Lacson, who is a PMAer and was a chief of the police of the
Mm.
PNP, has asked for the abolition of this task force that's mandated to end the local communist armed conflict. Ayaw ba nila matapos ito? 'Di ba? So in other words, this other presidential candidates, no, they really have actually shown the Filipino people their ignorance and their incompetence, and why it is that you must not vote for them, because they are going to put our country in harm's way again. But just by the resumption of the peace talks, what you're saying is that you're going to continue the grief and suffering and the excesses of the CPP-NPA-NDF. Kasi itong CPP-NPA-NDF na ito, Franco, ngayon, nasa ICU sila ngayon, naghihingalo.
Mm.
They talagang sandali na lang pwede na tayo mamili ng casket nila, di ba? And so
Mhm.
what are they doing? Because they are survivors. They're just holding their breath until the next president steps in, because they want Rodrigo Roa Duterte to go away. He is such a
Mm.
nightmare to this communist terrorist. So ayaw na nila kay Rodrigo Duterte. So inaantay lang nila na ang susunod na pangulo nila ay kaalyado nila. And who's that? That's Lenny Robredo. That's
Mhm.
that's Isko Moreno, 'di ba? And Manny Pacquiao hasn't said anything about the NTF-ELCAC, but in his senatorial slate are CPP-NPA-NDF members Nery
Mhm.
Colmenares and Elmer Labog. 'Di ba? So binigyan
Mm.
mo pa ng lifeline itong mga ito. Not that they're ever gonna win, but you've given them a propaganda, a platform for their propaganda, recruitment, fundraising, etc. 'Di ba? So hindi mo kaaway ang CPP-NPA-NDF, but the only one who's been unequivocally clear about the CPP-NPA-NDF is Bongbong Marcos, who said that
Mm.
the CPP-NPA-NDF is not they're not on the same side. How can I
Mhm.
be on their side? He said. No, if you espouse violence, the violent overthrow of government, how can I be on your side? And he has
Mhm.
vowed, he has committed to continue what the president Rodrigo Roa Duterte has started, which is really good news, because it does seem like he's going to be the next president. I mean, if you're going to go by the independent surveys, no, the phenomenal numbers that he and Mayor Sara Inday Duterte has managed to shore up, no. So I think this is good news for our country.
Ma'am, before I let you go, what message would you like everyone to know as an encompassing message for anybody who wants to know what is the purpose and what is the vision behind NTF-ELCAC?
Our country has really suffered so much grief and suffering and unspeakable grief. I say this as a mother. No, the grief I cannot imagine talaga. So, and the ones that have suffered it are the poorest of the poor, the most vulnerable sector in our society, sectors, our indigenous peoples, the poorest of the poor, our children. And we're going to be judged as a people by the way we took care of the most helpless among us. And if so, we are going to fail. If before the administration of this president, we are going to fail. But because of this president, we have redeemed ourselves. And yet, is the job over? Not by a long shot. But this president has effectively decimated so much, and we have to continue that fight, because this president and any other president after him cannot do it alone. Neither can the NTF-ELCAC, neither can Franco with us, or the SMNI who's with us. No, none of that. The ones that can do this talaga, yung pinaka ace dito, are the Filipino people, which is why we really want to thank you, because we really feel that you are with us in this fight. And and um and and alam mo, Franco, so many people, they ask me, how can we be part of this? Very simple, very very simple. Like what you're doing, Franco, you are really this is so big what you're doing, kasi we really have to be more, we have to be louder about our truths than they are about their lies. And we
Mhm.
have to be more relentless about rebuilding our country than they are about destroying our country. So we ask our people to join us. Sana yung susunod na kongreso, wala na yung kabag. Kabag is
Mhm.
Kabataan, Anak Pawis, Bayan Muna, ACT, and Gabriela.
Ang
Any
dami
one
pala
of
nila.
them. Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
and any one of them there in Congress means that you are enabling and you are continuing the grief and suffering of our people, which they have enabled and protected, itong mga NPAs, no? So we are asking you to be part of this fight, and we know that you are. We know that you how do I know this? I can feel it. I know it. I don't even need to commission a survey. I know this. 99.99% of our people are sick and tired of this communist salot talaga, and we want to end this bloody and tragic chapter of our country's history and start a new one, the one where real peace is really at hand. And you know what the name of the EO70 is? It's the whole of nation approach, which means that once again the president cannot do it alone, your government cannot do it alone. We really all need to really kapit bisig and really magtulungan tayo to fight for our country. So that's it.
Yes, Undersecretary Lorraine Badoy, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Franco.
Hope we can do this again, ma'am.
Coach Franco Says would like to thank the following sponsors for making this episode possible.
My armor of choice. Never go to battle without it. Beware the robot face. I am Knots and Crosses. Place your orders on their Facebook or Instagram pages. Just good vibes in the local jiu-jitsu scene. Check out my Ikiro Collective family at ikiro.ph. Simply Better Dentistry. Visit the Santos Dental Group and Oral Surgery Center. Book an appointment on their social media pages.